Hello and welcome to the Building Educator Capacity Podcast, where we strive to improve student learning by expanding the capacity of our school districts. My name is Phil, and we're once again joined by Mitchell Lilly. How are you doing today, Mitchell?
Hey, Phil, good. Thanks for asking.
So for our last episode of the season, we will be having a very special conversation looking over a research paper that was written by Dr. Patricia Hernandez. In this research, we'll be examining the skills schools need to consider as they make students career ready for employers. How exactly do schools need to adapt to teach a new generation of students to prepare for the workforce?
On today's episode, we have podcast veteran Dr. Valerie Schmitz, our Senior Director of Continuous Improvement, and Dr. Patricia Hernandez. Dr. Patricia Hernandez is from the School District of Janesville. She acts as the College and Career Readiness Coordinator. She has a Doctor of Education in Educational Leadership and Administration from Edgewood College. Dr. Hernandez has just finished a research study. She examines employers' perceptions of employability skills needed by recent high school graduates.
My first year as an administrator in a project-based charter high school, I vividly remember a conversation with a parent of a high school student. He said, "My daughter is very excited about this school. She's very happy. You can see the smile on her face. I want her to be happy, of course. But I also want to know that someday she'll be able to pay her mortgage and buy a car. Can you ensure me that this school will make her happy and prepare her for a career?" That question was and is very powerful and likely motivates many of us in education, happy students who are prepared for a successful life, family, career, all of the things that qualify for a successful life. And by the way, I do follow that student on LinkedIn, and I can attest that she has found an incredibly meaningful career and does seem very happy. She and many others remind us that it is our work to not only prepare students to master academic content, we also need to ensure that they have the skills and competencies to be successful in the careers of their choice. At CISA 2, we are incredibly fortunate to work with amazing experts in education. One of our go-to experts in academic and career planning, among other things, is Dr. Patricia Hernandez of the School District of Janesville. Dr. Hernandez has just finished an incredibly relevant and engaging research study whereby she examines employers' perceptions of employability skills needed by recent high school graduates. Dr. Hernandez, welcome to the CISA 2 Building Educator podcast, and congratulations on this terrific study.
Thank you.
So let's get into your research. It's fascinating, and the question that you research is so timely and so relevant. And you note that in 2020, business and industries in Rock County reported that high school graduates did not have the skills employers were looking for in the workplace. And you say that therefore they were not prepared for the industry. You also cited some very powerful labor statistics around unfilled jobs. And so can you tell us about that and really kind of the impetus for your study in general?
Sure. So just kind of looking at over my life and things like that when I'm dealing with my own education and what I've seen with my children and my nieces and nephews and so forth, this study was important to me because I really believe wholeheartedly that we need to graduate students that are college and career ready. And that looks different for every single kid, but there are many, many skills that all employers and many skills that in the academic world, professors are saying, hey, students need these skills in order to be ready, right, for college and or career. So when I did my study, I focused in on Rock County because this is where I live, work, and play. And I wanted to know, since I work with the employers every single day, I wanted to hear from them. And I wanted to know what skills do they want and need from our recent graduates. And so instead of just asking every single employer, I chose to focus on 3 sectors. And so my 3 sectors were our health science or healthcare, manufacturing, and hospitality and tourism. And the reason I chose those 3 was because those 3 sectors are the largest sectors in Rock County. And so they have the most hiring and the most vacancies, right? And so I wanted to focus on those 3 to find out, okay, what do they really need? So research does tell us, that students are graduating in droves, but they're not graduating with the skills employers and post-secondary institutions want. And so there is plenty of research out there that really talks about that. There's also an immense amount of research out there that talks about how college graduates are not prepared for the workforce. There is not a lot of studies out there on recent high school graduates. So my recent high school graduates focused on the ages of 18 to 21. And I wanted to know what skills employers want for that particular age group. And when I think about the district that I work for, the school district of Janesville, we live and breathe our district promises every single day. And one of our promises is that we are going to deliver on making sure that every single graduate from our school graduates with the college and career readiness skills they need in order to be employable, go off to college. And so what does that mean? We're promising that our students are going to take AP courses and that they're going to score 3 or higher on them. We're promising that they're going to have opportunities for dual enrollment, that they're going to, because of our instructional models and things like that, they're going to have an opportunity to get a C or better in Algebra 2, that they're going to, they need great attendance, they need community service, they need work-based learning experience, they need industry credentials and more. And so our focus is that in making sure that we're offering opportunities and setting up opportunities for our kids to be able to do that. So when I moved to Rock County almost 5 years ago, I didn't know anybody here. I new to the district, new to the county. And so I had employers that would come to me and say, I need students, I need workers. And basically this is what I received from them 5 years ago. I need students that can pass a drug test, that will put their cell phone down, and that will show up. And there was many conversations with employers that even said, I just need somebody that can breathe.
Mm.
If they can do that, I'll hire them on the spot.
Wow.
So in the last 4.5 years, the conversations have changed. Now my employers are asking me for specific skills. I even had one company very recently reach out to me and ask me, I need students for this, but here's the ACT requirement that I have.
Hmm.
And so I think it's really important that our staff and our administrators know what are these skills that they're looking for, as well as parents, right? Parents and even students, they need to know that. So over the last couple years, we not only have data from the Gallup poll that was taken that said that 5% of Americans say high school students are not graduating with the skills they need, but then we also have Manpower Group, and they're doing research all the time. And their most recent was 45% of employers are saying that the students cannot fill they can't fill the talent, they can't fill their openings that they have because there's not enough talent in the field. So again, it goes back to our kids are graduating in droves, but not with the skills that employers and colleges are looking for.
Wow. So again, a very relevant question, right?
Mhm.
And so you talked about some of those, the competency frameworks in the 3 industries that you study. And I think any of us in any professional career understand that there are competency frameworks, right? In education, we have teacher standards, administrator standards, and that sort of thing. In regard to industry standards, you define that as industry competency models to bridge gaps between what is happening in the secondary and post-secondary classrooms and the employer's expectations. So kind of a combination of those 3 worlds. Can you explain a little bit about those competency frameworks?
So the competency frameworks, first of all, there are several of them. So there's not only just one. The U.S. Department of Labor, Employment and Training Administration, many of us in education refer to that as ETA, those employability training agreements that we have our students fill out for youth apprenticeship. So they actually, they've been building industry competency models. And in my study, I'm just showing the basic model. And as you're looking at the model, it's tiered, right? So at the floor of the model are those personal skills. Every employee needs these personal skills. And so what are those? Those are things like showing initiative. Those are things like being professional, being a lifelong learner. These are things that every educator I can think of and every employer wants their employees and their students to have. The problem with these basic skills are that there are many, many students that haven't learned those. And so in my study, I found over and over and over employers saying, how do I teach that? How do I teach somebody at the age of 21 to be a lifelong learner when they didn't learn it growing up? How do I teach somebody to show initiative? It's almost like they're saying to me in the study, it has to be ingrained in you. And so that starts at a much younger age. So it's crucial, even in elementary schools, that we're doing things and we're offering opportunities and helping kids show initiative and to be professional, be courteous, and why it's so important that they need to be a lifelong learner. That 20 to 30 minutes a day of reading that they're trying to get every single parent to latch onto, it's vitally important, right? Because it's going to cause a pattern to happen, and that child's going to grow up being a reader and wanting to know more information. That second tier talks about academic competencies. And so those are those basic things that every high school, middle school, elementary school is offering, right? We're offering, hey, you take this course, you're going to learn some basic computer skills. We're going to teach you how to read and write. We're going to teach you some communication skills. What I'm finding though, even in that, when I've been a part of some classrooms and watched some things, yes, our students are learning how to put a PowerPoint together as an example, not realizing the importance of what's on that screen, that there should be less, 6 or less bullets, 6 or less words per bullet, that they shouldn't be reading the screen, right? All those things that they're not necessarily learning that. They learn the technique of putting together a PowerPoint, but not really the skill behind it. The third tier is workplace competencies. So being a team player, having problem solving skills, being safe in the environment. So what does that look like? And then the fourth and fifth are all about the industry, technical skills and the occupational skills that they need. And this is where in career and tech ed specifically, they can really hone in on those skills and really teach a kid like how to not only be a welder, but how to be a good welder. What does a quality weld look like, right? And so that's where that partnership with that employer really, really matters, because that employer could come in and really say, this is a great weld, and this is actually going to bring revenue in for our company. But this weld here is going to have to cause us to pitch the whole product.
Wow.
And so that's, again, why it's so important that employers are talking to the educator. We need them in our classrooms.
So one other thing that I would like to sort of touch upon, which is really, really interesting, given that we are in the year 2021, one of the skills that didn't show up as a top skill was technology use skills. I found that to be fascinating in a year when we have iPhones within a foot of us at all times, and everything is digital and Zoom. And can you tell us why that might be?
Yep. So if you take a look at the 3 industry sectors that I surveyed, right? So manufacturers better be about speed, because there's going to be another company out there that's going to have a bigger, better, brighter model than them. So they have to be the best. And so you think about, we are a very demanding society. We want things tomorrow, right? I ordered today, I want it tomorrow.
Yes.
And you think about the demand, right? That companies have to keep up with to make that happen for us. Their technology better be up to date and better even be future technology, right? What is that going to look like? There is probably no way that a school can keep up with that demand of technology.
Right.
I think about even some of our textbooks that our teachers are using are 15 years old.
Sure. Yeah.
A company cannot function in that same way. The other industry sector that I did was healthcare. Imagine if healthcare did not change their technology in 10 years.
That would be kind of unfortunate. Very scary.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you think about, you would go to a different doctor, you would go to a different clinic, you would go to a different chiropractor, physician. You would, because you would say, oh my gosh, look at this. You think about ultrasounds back in the day versus now 3D and 4D ultrasounds. A woman today that's pregnant, she gets an ultrasound and she's like, oh, that's nice. But then her best friend had a 3D one. Oh my word, right?
Right.
So technology is so vital. So as I looked through the qualitative data, one of the things that I saw was the lack of comments about technology use skills. But the little bit that I did see was you don't have the equipment that we have.
Mm-hmm.
So that's not even a big deal for me. If you have a workable attitude,
Mm-hmm.
if you can show up on time, if you can put your cell phone down, if you can pass my drug test, I can teach you anything on these tools and equipment that I have.
Right.
So I don't care what kind of technology you can or cannot do.
Oh, that's powerful. That's interesting.
hmm And then I think about hospitality and tourism, right?
Right.
Think about hospitality and tourism. We want our planes that we're going to get in, we want them to have a TV ready to go for us, right? We want them to, you go into a spa, right? You want the latest that they have to offer.
Mm-hmm.
You're not expecting to go somewhere and have something that is 10, 20 years old.
Right. No. Interesting.
There's a reason why in education we don't do ditto printing anymore.
Most of us don't. Exactly.
So with that, I really feel like that is why for across the board, technology use in any single sector, it was not important at all.
Important. Excellent. And you referenced in your study, and I thought this was very interesting too, that once upon a time we referred to those employability skills as soft skills, like how to be a lifelong learner, how to ask questions. And then we have, I guess for lack of a better word, the hard skills, like how to craft that weld and things like that. And something that you said a couple of minutes ago stuck with me as well. And we need to start building those competencies in elementary school. And I wonder if too often we think of academic and career planning as that's something that happens junior, senior year of high school. And while there might be sort of more focus on that, those 2 years, can you talk a little bit about how those might show up in elementary school and really kind of why that's so important to build early on?
Yeah. So in elementary school, when you're thinking about, you go into classrooms and you have the line leader, right? You have the person that's going to be doing the weather report and things like that. All of those skills cause a student to not only show leadership, but also show initiative, right? Think about how many times you walk into an elementary classroom and those hands are being raised,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And so really capturing that and really building on that and utilizing all of those practices you want to see happen and creating a system in your classroom to make that happen. But then with that, every elementary teacher I can think of is teaching based on standards,
Mm-hmm.
right? They have a curriculum that they have that's based around standards-based teaching, and they're looking at their standards and they're like, this is what I got to drive home today. Out of this one standard, this is what I need to teach. In that standard, then they have to find ways to embed these employability skills.
Mm-hmm.
So in that standard, where am I actually having the kids problem solve? Where am I having the kids show initiative? What type of communication am I asking the students to do? Critical thinking, those personal skills. And then when a student does something, because personal skills was the number one skill across the board, not only in my qualitative work, but also in my quantitative work. And when I think about personal skills, we have to really hone in on that. And when we're seeing kids that are showing initiative, to call it out, call it what it is. And, let kids know that this is really a skill employers are looking for.
Mm-hmm.
I think about just so many different things that an elementary school teacher could actually happen,
Mm-hmm.
And make happen in the classroom.
Right. And that likely is happening, as you say, with the raising your hand and taking initiative and group discussions and that sort of thing. But maybe a more of an overt connection in terms of why this is important. And you do define those skills in your research, and I'll sort of read them off. And you talk about interpersonal skills, personal quality skills, technology use skills, system thinking skills, communication skills, information use skills, resource management skills, critical thinking skills, and applied academic skills. And we can share in the resources of the podcast a link to that document outlining those. But I wonder, in your study, you suggested that really 3 of those emerged as being the ones that employers said, these are sort of mission critical. And your study revealed that personal qualities, interpersonal skills, and critical thinking skills seem to be the most important. Can you talk about how that emerged and what it might look like?
Yeah. So in my study, it was broken down into like 3 parts basically, but the first part was real just demographic, information that I wanted to capture. And so even interesting on that, one of my questions was, do you hire recent high school graduates that are 18 to 21? And I did have a couple companies that said no.
Hmm.
And so even though you're of age, right, they're looking for something more than that.
Mhm.
I thought that was interesting. But then after the demographics, one of my questions I was asking was, I asked every single employer to tell me the top 3. What are the top 3 skills that are vitally important to your company?
Mhm.
And so that is where I was able to pull and say, these are the top 3 skills on that, because I was able to quantify all those numbers together and make that pop. But then I also asked the employers to, on a Likert scale, to identify how important is every single skill.
Mhm.
And so I have basically 2 different sets of data. And then the final question was more of a qualitative, and it was basically kind of like a tell me more. Tell me something, whether it's reasons why or even more about 1 or 2 skills. Just talk to me a little bit more about it. And so throughout the entire thing, what I noticed was that my study aligned very closely to previous studies centered around more so college, right? And what employers want college graduates to have. But then I also noticed a pattern. I noticed that my qualitative data matched directly to my quantitative data. And so personal quality skills was the number 1 skill across the board that employers want all students to have. But in my research, I read over and over and over from different studies that what's difficult about personal qualities is, how do you teach it? How do you
Right.
teach personal qualities?
Yeah. So what do they look like?
Yeah. And so again, it kind of goes back to, when you're raising up your child and all of those skills that you want your child to do, right? You want him to make his bed every day, right? You
Yeah.
want him to get his homework done. You want him to brush his teeth without being told. You want him to put his clothes down, put the dirty clothes in the laundry basket, all that kind of stuff. You're just asking them to just some basic, simple rules. And but they also show leadership, right?
Mhm.
That's what do things without being told. So just thinking about that, even for educators to think about how can they also teach those skills and make it prominent in their classroom is vitally important.
So you talk about personal qualities as being one that's really important. Can you just share a couple examples in terms of what that might look like?
Mhm. So when we're talking about personal qualities, really having students, right, take the responsibility
Mhm.
and to be, self-disciplined,
Mhm.
be flexible,
Mhm.
and really showing initiative. And so when you're thinking about that, are the students in your classroom, teach them how to be willing to learn,
Mhm.
teach them how to even just try, right?
Mhm.
I know in classrooms left and right, students will shut down sometimes when they get frustrated with the learning process. And it's really important that they just try.
Mhm.
Let's just try. And when a student is completely lost and doesn't even know where to start, I've told my students, I just want you to start with writing whatever the teacher writes on the board or writes on, the dot cam, do the same.
Mm.
Start there.
Mhm.
If the teacher found it to be of value enough to write it down, maybe you might want to also write it down, right?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
opening up that piece as well. But I think it's just as vital too that students also accept responsibility
Mhm.
for their own personal growth, right? So what are they doing about their personal growth?
Mhm.
So whether it's a self-help book or, whatever they have going on, trying to just be a better person,
Ah,
and what does that look like?
nice. I recall a couple of years ago, there was a book called Grit. And it aligns with that very much. So too, just so it seems like this tenacity and, stick to itness aligns with that. So thank you. Then you also mentioned two others as being kind of high on the list: interpersonal skills and critical thinking skills. Can you talk about interpersonal skills and what that might look like in both in the classroom and in a career?
Right. So for interpersonal skills, I think about classrooms, right, where teachers are doing cooperative learning.
Mhm.
Great. But when they're doing cooperative learning, like what does that look like, right? Because every single student that's in that team should be collaborating with their members.
Mhm.
And there are sometimes, kids will say, I don't want to work with this person.
Yeah.
When you're when you're working, for a company, you don't have that choice or that right to say, I'm not going to work on that team because he or she's on that team.
Right.
You have to be able to work together, even if you don't agree on, on the topic. You have to be able to do that. And then also work independently for the good of the team. Can you do that? Can you keep your promises when you say, we leave a meeting and we say, what are the next steps that I'm going to do between now and our next meeting? It's the same for students. What are the things I'm going to do between now and Friday that's going to benefit the team, benefit the classroom?
Mhm.
Also, I think, teaching them how to communicate effectively. So communication is more than oral, right?
Right.
How to write effectively. And I look at the students in my school, I'm still seeing students that are like texting, right? They're texting their comments. My
Right.
own son, I'm watching him, he's 10 years old, and just thinking there's punctuation, capitalization that has to happen in the sentence. Please follow that, right?
Right. Right.
Maintaining a positive attitude.
Mhm.
And you have to teach that sometimes, how to put a spin on things and be positive. The world is crushing us and
Mhm.
with so many demands, and it's hard sometimes to be positive, but you got to find that positive because an employer, they don't want somebody that's going to be whining all the time.
Mhm.
They want somebody that's going to talk best about their company and show the brightness of their company, because there's always somebody in the community that's going to be talking bad about a company.
Right.
So as an employee, you got to show the best.
Mm. That's powerful. And then critical thinking skills. And I admit that seems to be, of the three, maybe the most prevalent that we see show up in schools, but certainly room for growth, right? There are opportunities there. So what does that look like in the classroom and in the workplace?
So I think both in the classroom and the workplace, they probably look very similar, because when we're asking our students or employees, right, we want them to analyze the data. So in a school system, as an administrator, analyze the data. I want to know why. I want to know who, what, where, why, when type thing. But then in a classroom, right, a teacher is going to ask a student their opinion, but follow it up with why. Get them to analyze and deeply think about, why do they feel as strongly as they do. So then when I look at just as an employee-employer relationship, right, you still want somebody on your team that is going to ask why. Why didn't we mass produce as much as we thought we could? Why didn't this piece of equipment work like it was supposed to work, right? We want to ask those reasons why. We want them to be able to solve problems as critical thinkers. We want them to be able to plan and organize and execute, and also just sound decision making. We want them to be able to make decisions that are going to benefit the classroom, benefit their writing or their assignment, benefit their family, but also benefit their company that they're working for.
Yeah, fantastic. I love in your study also, you quote FDR, and you say, we cannot, he says, and you share, we cannot always build the future for our youth, but we can build our youth for the future. And what a powerful statement. And, we often hear educators reflect, right? So we're preparing students for jobs that don't even exist. And that's certainly true. And probably, giving the fast pace of the global economy more relevant than ever. So from your personal experiences and sort of a forecasting, what's the relevance of those three skills that you just talked about? Are they sort of long-term important skills? Do you see them changing? What's your kind of forecast?
So I would say, first of all, they are still going to be important. They might not necessarily be the extremely important skills, right? But they're going to be important for sure. Because at the end of the day, we're still all about people, right? And we're all about treating people not only with kindness and things like that, but also treating them to gain their work, right? We want that client. And so how we treat them, right? And I think about my realtor that I bought my home from here in Janesville. Never misses my birthday. He never misses my home anniversary.
Wow.
He never misses my husband and our anniversary. He sends me probably a communication almost every single month, and we're going on 5 years now.
Wow.
And I think about when I plan to sell my home, I'm going back to him. And it's because he has made me feel important.
Oh, that's powerful.
Right? So as an employer, employers want their employees to make sure that that client feels important. And I was just on a committee yesterday for a nonprofit organization, and they were talking about sponsorships. And I'm on a committee that we need to sponsor $500,000. We got to find people that are going to give us enough money to equal $500,000.
Wow.
And they were talking about what's getting in their way, where are the weaknesses? And it all stemmed around personal qualities.
Wow.
We get the money from people, but we don't follow up enough, making them feel important. We send a thank you for $150,000 that they gave us, and that's it. And we realized yesterday in the meeting that we need to do more.
Yeah.
Maybe we need to have a distinguished night, right? That these 5 or these 10 people that sponsored us at 10,000 or more need to be probably recognized a little bit more than just a thank you letter.
That's I mean, I'm just thinking everything that's happened in the last year and the way that the world has changed, is changing. It still goes back to that sort of innate human need to connect and build relationships, sitting around the fire thousands of years ago. There's something about that still remains critical in our work, whether it be in healthcare, whatever, right? So that's interesting, very powerful.
I think too, just to kind of add to it, Valerie, you had asked, do I see these, morphing? I think over time, things are going to morph a little bit, right? Because we want even more global citizens, and we want to be global thinkers and global employers. And when I think about that, what does that mean, right? And that communication piece is going to rear its head, because in order to be a global scholar, you almost need to be bilingual and biliterate.
Right.
And so the importance there of making sure that you have that embedded already in that K-12 system. What are you doing K-12 to make sure that your kids are graduating with the language skills that they're going to need in order to really be able to be global? Our companies here in Janesville, many of them are global companies. So you might start off on, working on the line in a manufacturing company, but in 2 years at the age of 21, you really might be over in Peru.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's a really important, point as well, in terms of just this kind of tandem relationship of being a successful citizen in a globally connected economy and world. And so the importance of numeracy, literacy, communication skills, being able to communicate not only in a native language, but in multiple languages, and also in alignment, very tight alignment with the employability skills, the critical thinking and the resource management and things like that you speak about. So here's the $1 million question. How do we do that in schools? How do we combine all of those things from a very practical Monday morning kind of, framework, attempt, whatever? What sorts of things are you seeing that an administrator could say, wow, what could this look like in my building?
Yep. So probably number one is one of your PD days offer PD on employability skills, period.
Hmm.
What are they? What do they look like? What do they look like in a classroom? And then what do they look like, as
Mhm.
as an employee of the district? What does it look like as an employee, right? So I think that is a 1 hour PD that needs to probably happen. They're bringing in a panel of people that represent every single career cluster out there
Mhm.
and identifying, hey, of these, all of these employers that are here today, let's hear from them what they need. I think that's an easy win. That's low hanging fruit. Every company I can possibly think of would bite at the bit to get in front of all of the instructors,
Hmm.
to get not only their name out there, but also to say, I want to partner. I
Hmm.
want to maybe adopt a classroom.
Mm.
I want to be there. I want to help. I want to raise up the next generation of workers because I already cannot fill the needs that I have. And I
Mhm.
want the needs to be filled with talent. So I'm going to help, right? I'm going to make that happen. The other PD that I think is also how to teach the teachers how to embed them and where to embed them.
Yeah.
What I've noticed with academic and career planning, and it makes my heart just feel so sad, is so many schools are still putting academic and career planning on one person's responsibility list.
Yep.
They're not listening to the state statute. When the state statute says every single person should be a part of academic and career planning,
Mhm.
that's so true. Every single person should have a part in that.
Mhm.
It's not one person or one department. It's not the counselor's job, right? So just like ACP, employability skills, it's not career and tech ed's job, which we're an elective. So we're
Right.
not even going to hit every single kid. I think about the English teacher. Maybe the English teacher should really have a session on cover letters,
Mhm.
on an introductory letter, on letters of recommendation. What's a good letter of recommendation? Even teaching the staff how to write letters of recommendation.
Mhm.
Right?
Yeah.
I think about the resumes. How do you have your resume pop when everybody is going for the same job that you're going for? You're a junior in high school, you're a great welder, the teacher loves you, but that's everybody else in your class too.
Right.
So, how do you set your resume and your cover letter apart from the rest of the crew so you actually get noticed?
Mm.
Those are the skills I think that
Mhm.
the teachers need to be kind of teaching students, but also that administrator needs to kind of set up time to make that happen.
Yeah, I love that. And just this notion that ACP isn't something that just happens in the business ed or tech ed wing of the high school. I mean, I think about performing in a musical, for example, and the interpersonal skills and the tenacity and all of that. So helping your entire staff understand these are really important things, and you're doing these in your classroom, and to help students draw that connection with why it's important and what that looks like
Mhm.
in a workplace.
Right. And then I think about even like military, right?
Right.
The military is chomping at the bit to get involved in our classrooms. And I know there's some fear out there with, oh, they're going to try to recruit, right? They're going to, my child's going to go into combat.
Mhm.
Oh my word, there's so much more the military could offer. I
Mhm.
think about the military here in Janesville. They want to teach our kids how to be better leaders. The
Wow.
leadership, the leadership education that they've received, they just want to give back.
Mhm.
So even letting them into your advisories, let
Mhm.
them take over and teach critical thinking skills.
Mhm.
Let
Mhm.
them teach problem solving skills.
Mhm.
Yeah, they're going to wear their uniform, but they have so many skills that they could be teaching, and just they've been around the block a little bit more. They've seen the world.
Yes.
They've been in very tough, critical, situations that they can
Mhm.
easily just lend a hand. The other thing I think about though too is we have work-based learning opportunities, but some of our students aren't getting the best experience. And part of it's our fault as
Mhm.
educators.
Mhm.
But when I say that, we have students that are in co-ops, we have students that are in youth apprenticeships, we have students that are interning,
Mhm.
but we have, at least here in Janesville, we have a handful
Mhm.
that are working for mom and dad.
Mm.
And that's great, but it's also not so great, because we've had some situations happen where mom and dad signed the form saying their kid is working, but they're not,
Sure.
you
I
know?
can see that.
So when we think about sometimes that it's really, working, it's not. But I think if schools can offer work-based learning
Mhm,
and even have it be part of the graduation requirement,
mhm,
that my kid is going to, all of our students are going to have some aspect of work-based learning. You
mhm,
could start job shadowing just for 1 hour experience in 7th grade.
mhm.
Get those 7th graders out for an hour. Let them see what the job is like.
You also do teacher job shadowing, correct?
Yes.
Through Rock County. That is incredibly powerful. Often, we go through our undergrad program and right into a classroom, and many of us have not, myself included, have not experienced other industry. And so that immersive experience could be incredibly powerful as well.
hmm
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's good. And then, just like academic and career planning, these skills need to be embedded. Somehow, some way, you have to figure out how to embed, start with one skill at a time, right? And if your kids are going to be developing a PowerPoint or Prezi or some type of a presentation for you, really outline and say, okay, what would an employer want?
Sure.
What
Mhm,
would a professor want?
mhm, mhm. Right. That's very powerful. Dr. Hernandez, thank you so much for sharing your study, your passion, your wisdom with us. And we really appreciate your expertise and the work that you bring to certainly your profession and to the children, not only of CISA 2, but of the broad audience of this podcast. So thank you very much.
I want to thank you. This is my first rodeo, so
Oh. Well, ride that bull and continue your good work. And again, thank you so much for your time.
I really like the research that Dr. Hernandez brought to us today. There's all sorts of skills that are now being considered by employers, whether those be personal qualities, interpersonal skills, or critical thinking. All these skills are especially important for us to start to formulate in our schools. Employers are looking for these skills when hiring, and we need to make sure students are equipped to be able to go out into this more competitive workforce.
No doubt. I was fascinated by the conversation, and I particularly appreciated the idea that we need more global thinkers as the world interacts more globally and makes an integrated market system. Even if you just start in a small role, having those global skills could lead to pretty incredible opportunities worldwide.
Absolutely, Mitchell. Couldn't have said it better myself. So once again, I'd like to give a big thanks to Ms. Liz Elliott, band teacher at Whitewater Middle School and Whitewater, Wisconsin, for the music that is used in our podcast. Thank you very much for listening to us in our first season of Building Educator Capacity. We'll be back next school year in August with a whole host of topics to discuss and explore. Subscribe to our podcast wherever you get your podcasts so you can know exactly when we start producing episodes for our second season. Have a great summer, and we'll see you again.